Okay, here we go. Welcome to The Right Focus. My guest today is Jane Sloven, and she's going to tell us about her books. So please do that, Jane.
Okay, well, let me tell you about Termination of Benefits, which is my first mystery.
Okay.
And I'll tell you a little bit about how I decided to write it. I'm a lover of mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm a lover of books, almost any kind. And I love mysteries. And I love mysteries that are about problem solving and about relationships. And I particularly love mysteries that have female protagonists.
Yes.
So, although I started, I think, my love of mysteries, well, with Nancy Drew, like so many people did, right? And when I was in law school, Sherlock Holmes stories helped me tolerate the tedium of some of my legal classes. So anyway, I thought I would write a mystery, and it took me a very long time to finish this book from the time that I started it. So I wanted to write about relationships, about psychotherapists, because that was my long-term career. I was a clinical social worker.
Right.
And I wanted to also write about trauma, because I did a lot of work as a psychotherapist with folks who had traumas, either the big T traumas or the small T traumas. And mysteries are a lot about trauma, really.
Yes.
It's about someone getting murdered, and then what happens to that person before the murder, if you have that in the book, and what happens to the people around the victim afterwards.
I get so irritated when I read a mystery that's in a series and the main character keeps finding dead bodies and it never affects them.
Exactly.
So, yes.
Exactly. Yes. Because that's a one-sided character.
Yes.
It's
exactly.
it's not a fully developed character.
Right.
And so I wanted to write using some of my knowledge from the years that I did a legal practice.
Yes.
And a lot of that time was really working in law reform work with victims of juvenile crime and with juvenile offenders. And then I did traditional practice. Then I left law and went to get a social work degree. So I wanted to incorporate some of the legal things I knew. And I wanted to incorporate what I knew about psychotherapy and look at psychotherapists from both sides of the couch. Yes. What it's like to be in your office working with clients. And so Termination of Benefits has scenes that take place in my main character's therapy practice. And my main character is named Sarah Green. And she was an attorney who jettisoned her legal practice after her very close friend and colleague was murdered by a client she was defending, and that client was originally assigned to Sarah. So she jettisoned her legal career, fell into a depression, moved to Maine from Boston. I did that. I didn't fall into a depression. I didn't have anyone get murdered, but I did move from Boston to Portland, Maine, and so did my character. And then my character became a clinical social worker. So let's see. In this mystery, managed care is something that takes predominance as well. I think people know what managed care is. It's the insurance company that tells you how many therapy sessions you can have, and requires your therapist to submit reports. And it also may deny benefits.
Meetings will take care of the problem, you know.
Excuse me?
At least, well, in the insurance thing, 6 meetings will take care of the problem.
That's right.
Sometimes does not.
That's exactly right. And when I started my clinical practice, there were no managed care companies in Maine. So therapists could see who they wanted for however long they wanted and do the work in the way that they considered best. And at a certain point, managed care companies came to Maine and sort of wagged a long finger and said, we're going to tell you now how many sessions you can have with your clients and what you can do in those sessions. And you're going to give us all sorts of information about your clients. And I didn't like that very much. I didn't like the lack of confidentiality, and I didn't want somebody else telling me how I was going to work with my clients. You know, there were some good ideas about managed care when it first came in, but in a way it put a stranglehold on how clinicians practiced.
Well, it turns into a bureaucracy.
That's right. It took away autonomy. Exactly. So at the time that I was developing the ideas for termination of benefits, I wanted to kill off somebody in managed care. It gave me great pleasure to contemplate that. And so that was one of my goals. And another goal was to have, you know, these relationships among women. And also I love romance. So there was romance here. And what else can I tell you? I'm terrible at doing those elevator pitches. So I'm going to read from the back of my book. And this is a pretty good
yes, that will work. Show us the cover. Show us the cover.
Here's the cover.
Okay, great.
And I did get some terrific reviews, including a good Kirkus review, which later I found out was hard to get. So here's my little blurb. Therapist Sarah Green is skilled at helping her counseling clients untangle their emotional dilemmas, but doesn't do so well with her own problems. And she's got big ones. Ghostly visits from a murdered friend and frightening flashbacks. Then a psychopath starts stalking Maine's counseling community, and Sarah struggles to separate past trauma from present danger. While juggling
cold chills, I've got cold chills. That blurb is giving me cold chills.
Okay. While juggling an ex-husband hot to reconcile and the attentions of a sexy detective, Sarah, gotta have one of those. Sarah joins forces with a take no prisoners defense attorney, a top-notch private eye, both women, and her office mate Louise to catch the killer. When the next life in peril is her own, Sarah realizes she's stronger than she thinks and welcomes unexpected assistance from this world and the next.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. And where can we find that book? Is it on Amazon? Is it widely distributed?
It is on Amazon, and it is it's on Kindle as well.
Okay.
And it can be ordered through my publisher, Maine Authors Publishing, and they are in Thomaston, Maine, and it can be ordered through any indie bookstore in Maine.
Okay, great. I hope you will send me the link to the main bookstore thing.
I will, and to my website.
I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay, great.
Okay, now how did you go through the process? You said that it took you a long time to write the book. Was it a long time because you were also working at the same time? Because my first book took me a long time to write, but I was working at the same time, and it was a tinkering for me at the beginning, and then all of a sudden it took hold of me and I couldn't let it go. And so then I started really devoting myself to writing constantly, consistently on it. So what was your particular long time reason for writing Termination of Benefits?
Well, here's how it happened. I had these ideas. I wanted to have 4 female friends work on this together. So my protagonist, her office mate, the PI, and the attorney. And I got Lyme disease.
Oh no.
And I couldn't sleep. So I took these ideas and I would go up to my 3rd floor in this house that I lived in at the time. if I couldn't sleep, there I would be from 1 a.m. until 3 a.m, sitting at my computer. And I just wrote, and the story itself came out in about 3 to 4 months.
Right.
The whole story. I just sat at the keyboard. What was so much fun about this was that I had no idea who the murderer was. I really didn't know what was going to happen from one moment to the next. So I would sit at the computer at my laptop, and I would be inside the mystery while I was writing the mystery.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It was so exhilarating.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful way to tolerate this illness.
Right.
And so after I finished it, I had a neighbor who was just wonderful, and I would bring her my pages the day after, in the morning, I'd bring them over to Connie, and she'd read them and tell me what she thought. And then I sent it to a mentor, someone I'd known for a long time who was a professional writer. He had Michael Castleman. He's out in San Francisco. He has a mystery series. He's also written all sorts of health books, and he's a writer by profession. Not like me. I meandered through professions: law, social work, writing. So I sent it to Michael, and he was very kind. He wrote very humorous notes, and like, "We know, Jane, we know," because I was so repetitive. And then said, "All writing is revision." And that was wonderful, because he didn't say, "Go bury this in your yard, burn it, forget about it." He just said, "All writing is revision. And this is what's good, and these are the things you need to learn." So I took that manuscript, and I used it as a template to learn how to write. And I started taking classes, and I'm a member of Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance, and they're wonderful. So I took courses, 10-week courses with them, and I took weekend workshops and evening workshops, and I read incessantly. So even though I was working, I always read, and I'm retired now. I've been retired for 12 years, actually. And I'm a fast reader.
Yes.
So there are many ways to learn how to write, but a lot of really good writers recommend reading as a way to learn how to write, because you pick up stuff through osmosis.
Yes.
So I had to learn how to set a scene, how to start a chapter and end a chapter.
Right.
How to create an arc of the story, how to write dialogue. And I had someone who was a consultant for me initially, named Mark Chimsky, who is a playwright who used to work, I believe, he was at a big publishing company. I think it was HarperCollins, but I might be wrong about that. And now he's a private consultant. He moved to Maine, and he consults with writers, and he writes screenplays and musicals. So Mark helped me initially, and it was really great to have his feedback, because he said, this is a book that's worth continuing to work on. This is you have a good solid basis here. And he recommended that I join a writers group.
Right.
So I found a writers group, and that was my first writers group. And I worked on the book with them. And then I had another writers group, and I worked on the book with them. And I kept taking classes, and I worked on the book with my teachers. One of the places I also took classes was through the University of New England, their Portland campus. They have a library of Maine women writers. They have a collection, the Maine Women Writers Collection, and they teach writing classes. And that was wonderful, because it was prompt-based classes, and each of those prompts was designed to help you work on something like setting a scene, or creating characters, or working the plot. Right. So that was lovely. I had wonderful teachers there, and lovely, a lovely community of writers. So that was really helpful too. And I just kept working on the book. So Lyme disease for me was multiple infections, not just Lyme disease, but there are
Right.
co-infections.
People
And
do not realize how terrible Lyme disease can be.
they don't really. It was disabling.
Yes.
So when I first started treatment, I really had to stop work. I had
Mhm.
about 3 months. I couldn't see clients. I could barely get out of bed. And then I regained my health, but I would relapse. So I would
Right.
have relapses along the way. And that's part of why it took so long for me to finish the book,
Mhm.
because there was no straight line for me.
Right.
And I don't think I actually finished it until I stopped working.
Right. Mhm.
And then I focused on it. And at the same time that I was working to finish Termination of Benefits, I was in, I think I was in another writing group at that time. I was also working on another book,
Right.
which was titled Compassionate Journey, Honoring Our Mother's Stories.
Right.
And that is an anthology of essays by 5 women, including me.
Mhm.
And we worked collaboratively for about 5 years to write our essays about our mothers. And
Mhm.
that book looked at our mothers from the perspective of all the forces that formed them: social,
Right.
political, economic, religious, how those forces created the women that they became, and then how that impacted their mothering of us and the times, because that was before the women's movement.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm about to turn 71 this summer, so different era. And those book, and so that book also has writing prompts
Mhm.
for other people that might want to write about their mothers. That was a very powerful. That book had a powerful impact on people that read it.
Mhm.
It's not in print anymore, although
Oh.
I still have copies, and people can get it through my website.
Mhm.
That book came out a month after Termination of Benefits. So it came out at the same time.
Yeah.
What else do you want to ask me about?
Okay. How did you, when you finally finished the book, did you get an agent or did you go straight to a publishing house? How did you get it published?
Great question. So I was in a long relapse
Mhm.
with tick-borne illness, multi-year. I
Mhm.
was really disabled by fatigue. And I started querying, which is writing a query letter,
Mhm.
sending it out to agents, writing a summary, writing a synopsis. I
All
would
those are
rather,
things you have to learn.
that's right. And I would rather write 200 pages of a novel than write a synopsis. So I know from listening to your podcast that you have a very sharp analytical mind. And
Thank you.
it's so clear from how you describe the writing process.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that at some point when I was practicing law, I must have had an analytical mind, but it's no longer with me. So I did that querying, and I had one or two or maybe 3 agents that asked for the whole manuscript. One agent who asked for the whole manuscript, she's very well known in New York, lovely, lovely, lovely woman. And she was just so kind to me. She said she said, "You write like a dream." Now, to get that kind of feedback from an agent,
That's phenomenal. That is
just
phenomenal.
it made everything worthwhile.
Mhm.
But she asked whether this was a standalone mystery or did I intend for it to be part of a series.
Mhm.
And I said, well, I intend for it to be part of a series, but I have to be honest that I'm just coming out of a very long relapse with Lyme disease. And
Mhm.
I can't promise that I can put out a book a year. This is my first book. And I can't commit to that. And
Mhm.
she said, I'd love to take you on, but I can't take on a first-time writer with a standalone mystery. And I appreciated her honesty, and she appreciated mine.
Mhm.
You know, some people said to me, oh, you shouldn't have said that. You should have just said you could, you know, put out the books. And I
I
thought,
think
no,
honesty is a better reputation than hiding the truth.
I think so too, all the time. And there was no way I could be unethical
Right.
about that. And I also wouldn't want to put myself in a position where I wasn't able to meet a commitment that I made.
Mhm.
So I thought about it, and I thought, if that's what this agent is telling me, then that's what the story is going to be. I'm going to need to go a different way.
Mhm.
And I could have just gone with a strict self-publishing route, but that felt overwhelming to me.
Yes.
First-time
Mhm.
author.
Well, you just spent years learning the writing process, basically, and synopses and summaries and blurb and all those. That you've
Exactly.
learned so much. Very few people want to take on the next step, which is publishing.
Exactly. I don't think anybody realizes, and I certainly didn't, how much is involved here.
Yeah.
It
Mhm.
is very complex these days. So I did have an editor who worked with me, and he's the brother of Michael Castleman, was the writer who
Yes.
mentored me, and his
Yes.
brother, David, or Deke, he did editing. So he edited Termination of Benefits for me, and he was a great editor. He really helped me with some aspects of the book. He could have guided me through self-publishing, but I still felt it was too much. And so I bounced some ideas off of Deke and off of Michael. And then I submitted the book to She Writes. Do you know She Writes Press?
No, I don't, but I can
So
investigate.
They're a phenomenal publishing company, and
Mhm.
they're by women for women.
Mhm.
And they were just getting started. Maybe they were a year into it. The women who run that, they were publishing professionals from the publishing world, and they accepted the book. And I was considering going with them, but if you wanted to have your book out there with them, you needed to pay a publicist, and the amount of money for a publicist was far beyond my means.
Mhm.
So I decided to go with a hybrid publishing company, Maine Authors Publishing,
Mhm.
in Thomaston, Maine. And so one pays them for a line editor,
Right.
for the cover design, which you're going to do anyway. You have to pay
Mhm.
for no matter who's going to do it.
Yes.
And they they have the books printed, and then they have all sorts of services that are part of what you get. They've moved into more of a cooperative
Right.
now. They were a cooperative to begin with, but it's even more a cooperative now.
Mhm.
So they have a salesperson. They set up all sorts of fairs and help you. They go to fairs and festivals with a booth, and you can, pay a nominal amount to have your book there and to be there to sign.
Right.
And they help you with all sorts of things. They're an amazing hybrid company. But the one thing they don't do is they don't put you on Ingram. And Ingram is the national distributor of books.
Yes.
So She Writes, everything would be on Ingram.
Mhm.
And but Maine Authors Publishing doesn't. However, they were phenomenal. All sorts of workshops on how to market your book, connections with other authors, how to approach libraries, how to do readings. They do an amazing job, and they're just wonderful, wonderful authors who publish through Maine Authors Publishing. So there's a community of support, and they also are very connected to independent bookstores in Maine.
Right.
So
I need to
that's
go
who
up
I
there
went.
and take some of their workshops about
Excuse me?
talking. I need to take some of their workshops about approaching libraries and things of that sort.
Yes, they're terrific that way. So I've stayed with them, and also Compassionate Journey, we decided to go with Main Authors Publishing as well. We queried that book, and we sent in book proposals for that book, but all of us were of a certain age. So, that's another issue. You're 65 or older, and how many years are you going to spend querying agents trying to get your book published? Even if it's picked up by an agent, then it's going to take a while for somebody for a publishing house to pick it up. Then it's going to take a while for something to be published. If you want to put it out there, sometimes the best thing to do is self-publish or go with a hybrid publisher or a small independent press.
Right. Now, you've got Termination of Benefits published. Are you working on any other writing?
Yes. So I just finished my sequel.
Okay, great.
And I'm so excited about this book. So I wanted to write about trauma and its resolution and weave that into a great mystery. The other thing I did with Termination of Benefits, as you understood from the summary, is that it's got paranormal aspects. So I also have training in esoteric healing modalities, one in particular. And in those trainings worked with a lot of people who were clairvoyant, and you learn in these trainings to work on those kinds of skills. So I wanted to make that a part of Termination of Benefits as well. My main character has a lineage from both sides of her family of clairvoyance, and in Termination of Benefits, one of the plot points is her struggle with not wanting to feel like she's crazy, because she has these awarenesses or these conversations with her dead friend, but also recognizing that, wow, there's information here that's important and necessary to pay attention to. So I wove that through the book, and that was so much fun.
Do you have a title for that book?
For the second book?
Yes.
The second book is Fragment of Doubt.
Okay. Oh, I like that. Fragment of Doubt. And when do you think it will achieve publication?
Well, that's a good question. So let me tell you one thing about this. Lyme disease is part of this book. So I've woven a lot of information, and it's part of the plot, and it's very suspenseful. So I don't know yet, because here's the thing. I also am about a third of the way through a prequel.
Right.
Now, normally people write their first book, their second book, and their third book, right?
Yes.
Just like most people don't start out life as a lawyer, become a social worker, and then become a writer. But, oh well, I never knew in high school what I wanted to be. And that should be helpful for anybody who's struggling with a career path. It can be circuitous, and that's fine. So I didn't do it that way. I wrote the book I wanted to write, and then I thought, oh, I have this sequel that I want to write. And then I thought, oh, I want to write a prequel. I want to write about my characters before Termination of Benefits. So I'm in process with that too. And I think that I may take some time to finish the prequel. I write faster than I did before, right? It's not going to take me 10 years to finish this book. And I have a fabulous writing group now, just a terrific group of other writers. So I think I may wait until the prequel is done and then put the prequel and the sequel out at the same time.
Right.
But in the meantime, I'll be querying and looking at other ways of publishing.
Now, did you write Fragment of a Doubt in 2-hour segments every session? Or did you follow a different procedure in your writing process?
What a great question, Emily. So I was listening again to some of your podcasts about writing, and I thought, gosh, I wish I could do an outline. I've always wished I could do a book outline, but I can't. And when I try to do that, I feel hemmed in and a little claustrophobic.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm a pantser, seat of the pants writer. And I binge write. That's what I do. So
Mhm.
I sit down and I get going, and I may write for 4 hours and forget that I need to get up and walk around and stretch. And then I'll stop for a while. And sometimes if I'm stuck on a plot point, I'll ask before bed for some inspiration. And I did that with Fragment of Doubt. And I woke up at 2 a.m. with an entire chapter. I had to get out of bed and write the chapter because it was all there.
Mhm.
And the one thing that was complicated about it was that I had a character behaving in a way that I would never consciously have had him behave. And I thought to myself, this is not what I wanted to have happen in this book. I didn't want this character to do this, but I don't have a choice here. This is this character telling me that this is what they're doing. So sometimes inspiration strikes it, in the middle of the night. And when I thought I was finished with Fragment of Doubt, I went through it with my writing group, and they gave me great feedback.
Mhm.
And then I went through it with Deke Castleman, and he loved the book. And that's always really nice when the person
Yes,
who's
it is.
editing your book gives you great feedback about it. But after I went through all of his edits, I wrote him back and said, one of the things I asked you about was I think that this plot is a little too straightforward. Termination of benefits, it's very hard for anybody to figure out who the murderer is. It's
Mhm.
really twisty.
Mhm.
And Fragment of Doubt was a little too straightforward.
Right.
So he said, I forgot, I have a bunch of notes about this. So he sent me some notes.
Mhm.
And I sat with those notes for a week and a half or 2 weeks because I needed to have those things marinate.
Mhm.
And I let them marinate. And then, boom, I got it. I got down in front of my laptop and took me a couple of hours, and I braided in multiple other plot points.
Mhm.
So that's the way I write. It's not the most efficient, but it's pleasurable. And I have to say my writing group was very helpful too, because every second month or third, I think it was every second month, I had to, it was my turn was up, and I had about 20 pages to present.
Mhm.
And so if I was lollygagging, I know that's an old-fashioned word, but it really fits here. If I was lollygagging, then I had that deadline. I've never seen myself as a procrastinator, but I don't want to feel pressured in my writing. I want it to be pleasurable. I'm 70, I don't need to be a taskmaster for myself or have anybody else be doing that for me. I remember Leah Waite, who is a main mystery writer who passed away. What was it, a year or two ago? She's part of the main crime writer. She was part of the main crime writers community, and they have a blog. And I remember one of her blogs really impacted me because she wrote about the pressure she was under constantly to provide the next book and provide the next book and provide the next book. And she wrote about how she wasn't sure she would recommend that for other writers. She had publishers, and that was the way it went. And I was on the fence about how to go, what direction to go in myself. And her words had a lot of import for me.
I think because I taught for 30 years, and I had looked forward to writing that whole time and tinkered with writing toward the end of my career. And the one thing that I know that is most important is that I want to have so much joy in what I'm currently doing, because pursuing the joy is more important than any long-term goal or anything. Now, the long-term pursuing the joy happens to match my long-term goal, so that's handy. But if
Yes.
ever what I'm doing is not fun anymore, I know I'm going to drop it out because I don't need it, and just pursue something else. It's like coming up with these interviews. I thought I should do interviews, and then I hesitated and hesitated and hesitated. And then I put the word out. I dared myself to put the word out, and I was overwhelmed with the number of people who wanted to do an interview. And so this has been fun because I'm learning lots of things. Now, how did you find your critique groups? Because you said you were involved in one and then another one.
My first group, very interesting. So Mark Chimsky, who was my consultant at the time, this is way back, I'm going way back here, said, Jane, you shouldn't be paying me. You need a writing group. And within a week, I was at a birthday party for somebody, and I was talking to some of the people there. And one of the women said, I'm writing a mystery, and I am just about to set up a writing group. Why don't you be part of it? And so that's how that writing group came into being. And then it had sort of a natural endpoint, that particular writing group. And then the next one was created through the Maine Women Writers Collection at the University of New England. I was taking a class, and a couple of other women and I started a writing group. And let's see, I had another one with two women, both of whom were getting their masters and MFAs at Stone Coast Writers. What is it? At the Stone Coast program, an MFA program. They were fabulous. They were just fabulous people to work with in a writing group. And then this writing group that I've been in for now 4 or 5 years developed out of a class that I took on mystery writing through Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance. Dick Cass, who's a mystery writer, was teaching that class. And it was a great group of people. It wasn't as many people as they normally have in a class. It was a smaller group, but he went ahead with the teaching. Fabulous, fabulous people in that writing group. And I think there are maybe 6 of us. I can't count at the moment, but I'm pretty sure there are 6 of us in this writing group. And I think the class might have had 7 or 8 people. And the 6 of us decided that we wanted to continue writing together. And it's a really fabulous group. Everyone gives great feedback. People have different orientations. Some people are as analytical as you are with the way that they look at things. And some people have come in with other perspectives. And this has been the best writing group. Well, yeah, everybody's producing wonderful books. In this past 6 to 8 months, everybody has, we've been reading each other's entire manuscripts, because during the time we've been working together, everybody's produced a manuscript and is in their second. So it's a great group. And that's how I found it, sort of naturally. When you're taking classes or workshops, you meet other writers and you know who you want to write with.
Thanks for listening to The Write Focus, a podcast for writers at all levels, hosted by Emma Lee from Writers Inc. Books, assisted by Renee Black and Edie Runes. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Music is licensed through Audio Jungle, called Background Music Loop. Its creator is Alexander Polishchuk, known on Audio Jungle as Plastic 3. The music comes in different iterations. Show notes and resource links for this and other episodes can be found found at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Write to us at winkbooks@aol.com when you have questions, comments, and speculations. We will try to answer you as quickly as possible. By the way, we will not mind your email address. That's rude. If you find value in our content, share with your writing friends or write a review. We're small beans here without the advertising budget of the big peeps, and you can make a difference. And whatever occurs, write on.